Hello, and welcome to another Danny Phantom redesign for my Shapeshifter AU. Last time I redesigned literally just Danny, so let's redesign some villains.
Okay, let's go.
You've heard of Vlad Masters, now get ready for Vlad Mannequin, cause I'm about to dress this man up like a doll. When it comes to his human design, my Vlad design really only innovates on the details. For one thing, Vlad's design is actually quite good at accomplishing its goals. And for another, there's just not really much you can change about a three-piece suit. I started by giving him a pinstripe suit to invoke the image of a mob boss. I played around with the lapels a lot, since I think that's where you typically customize a suit the most. I ended up landing on this really cool fang shape. I tried to give him embroidery on the lapels, but I ended up making his chest area too busy. I did add some red piping though at the very end. I needed to incorporate more of that red from his bow tie into the rest of the design. I also played around a lot with giving him a shape motif. I landed on elongated triangles because they look like fangs. They show up in his suit buttons and somewhere on Plasmius' design as well. Vlad's shoes are still pointy dress shoes, but I overlaid a reptile scale texture onto them. I like to pretend that they're made of dragon skin. Last is his jewelry. He's got a custom Green Bay Packers ring and a pearl wallet chain. I gave him the chain mostly as a subtle parallel to my human Danny design. Vlad is meant to be a symbolic dark future to Danny, after all. Same eyes and natural hair color, similar backstories, different outlooks on life. Speaking of which, Vlad and Danny both met their end and new beginnings by the same machine, the Ghost Portal. And technically the same hand, too. Jack Fenton played a role in both their backstories. While Danny found a new lease on life after the portal accident, Vlad was the opposite. Danny is future-focused. Vlad is stuck in the past. Danny changes for the better every day, but Vlad's been the same person for 20 years. Vlad is not at fault for his slow, agonizing death and rebirth, but it is his responsibility to process his trauma and learn to let go of the resentment that he holds. And I think that little word, responsibility, is one of the main differences between the two. While Danny shoulders more responsibility than he should, and as a result is selfless and turns outward, Vlad is selfish and constantly turns inward. He accepts no responsibility. They're two sides of the same coin, ringed by an edge called choice. Neither of them chose their past, but it's their actions that decide their futures. There's one upside to being stuck in the past, though. You get really good at lying to yourself. You rewrite history, reinterpreting events until it fits your narrative. Eventually, you're able to convince yourself of anything, which, ironically, also makes you really good at lying to others. Because to you, you're not lying. You're telling the full truth, as far as you're willing to admit. And Vlad uses this to his full advantage. He has had one narrative in his head for so long that the world owes him for what he went through. So, he became a chameleon, always shifting his persona to reflect what others want from him. In talk shows and interviews and magazines, Vlad Masters shows many signs of life. He's charismatic, charming. He's a scientist, engineer, and business mogul. A second-generation Russian immigrant. A first-generation college student with a rags-to-riches story. But he's dead inside. Just an empty husk with nothing left to fill it. That is, until Vlad Plasmius comes out to play. Plasmius is Vlad's ghost half, his alter ego. In my version of Danny Phantom, all half-us, half-ghosts, half-humans, are shapeshifters. Their ghostly form changes based on how they feel about themselves. And, as previously discussed, Vlad is a chameleon who believes whatever he tells himself, and having used his powers for 2 decades now, he is really good at weaponizing that fact. In his ghost form, my Plasmius can impersonate other people. He can change his shape to look exactly like another person, kinda like a morpho. All he has to do is convince himself that he is that person. Potential investor won't sign a contract? That's fine. He'll simply become them, sign the contract for them, and leave them none the wiser. After all, he had witnesses saying that the investor did sign that contract. Look, my dear friend, here's your own signature proving it. Here's something that fascinates me about Vlad's half-a status. Unlike Danny, who died and was reborn in a single moment, Vlad never really had a moment of death. Sure, he got blasted in the face by ectoplasm to the point that it etched itself into his very DNA, but his death, if we can call it that, was a slow one. An agonizingly painful, unrelenting infection that hospitalized him and ruined his life for years. So it's interesting to think about how that would affect his powers. All ghosts seem to have the standard ectoplasm generation and manipulation. My Danny has electricity-based powers because of his death. But what's a real-life application for ectoplasm exposure? The closest thing that I can think of is radiation poisoning. This works in two ways. When people are exposed to significant amounts of radiation, it doesn't usually kill them immediately. It infects their DNA, almost rotting them from the inside out. Sound familiar?
But wait, there's more!
In plants, radiation can sometimes cause a DNA mutation called fasciation. It causes a plant's growth to distort by copying sections of itself over and over again. It looks a little freaky, but it doesn't really hurt the plant. Anyway, maybe this is why Vlad has such an easy time with duplication. On top of his years of experience. I'm also going to give him a death scar referencing this radiation angle. Unlike Danny, Vlad can't hide his death scars. And honestly, Danny only hides his scars because they invite some very pressing questions. Vlad's human form still shows his pitted acne scars under the right lighting conditions. He also wears makeup to cover them up. But Plasmius' death scar is much more dramatic. One side of his face is warped and melted looking, with the skin changing color where it was affected by the ectoblast. This is because of how his accident affected his confidence. It doesn't matter if acne and burn scars are nothing to be ashamed of. He feels like his face is ruined, so that's what Plasmius' face became. If he learned to accept his body for how it is, that melted death scar would morph into simple acne scars. Or maybe acne in general, given that death scars are kind of a moment frozen in time, but you get the idea. But I think the buck stops here when it comes to the radiation gimmick. I feel like the ability to melt skin and disintegrate bones is a little too powerful even for Vlad, so maybe he just uses flame-based attacks most of the time. Anyway, enough theorizing from me. Let's talk about the color motif again. In the previous video, I used black and green as a symbol for death, and white and red as a symbol for life, which makes things a little complicated considering Vlad's canon design. And I totally get it. The motif is opposite for Vlad because he is supposed to oppose Danny here. But given that we've already established a color motif to mean a specific thing, we'll have to evolve it slightly for Vlad. We've mentioned Vlad Masters is dead inside, just a seemingly soulless vessel puppeting itself to look human, so this is now the reason that he wears black. But Plasmius? When he comes out, he feels alive! Plasmius is exactly who he says he is. He is strangely honest. No secrets, no chameleoning, just pure, unadulterated, gleeful monstrosity. Assuming he's not currently impersonating someone else. And this is why Plasmius has the all-white suit and vibrant red cape. Like my Danny 2.0 design, Plasmius also feels no need to make himself look human. He's got green skin and flat red sclera. No pupils. Plasmius looks more monster than human. Deep down, Vlad accepts that he is a monster, so that's how his ghost presents to others. Unsurprisingly, Plasmius is modeled after classic vampires. Vampires have their roots in Slavic mythology, typically acting as the restless dead or as a metaphor for the ultra-rich. All of which is very fitting for Vlad, considering that he's technically undead, embodies corporate greed, and, at least in my version, has ties to a Slavic country. So I was inspired by Slavic period clothing worn by nobles and military generals. I was especially inspired by Tsar Nicholas II. That's Anastasia Romanov's, or I guess Anastasia Romanov's dad, by the way. Like other nobles of the time, Nicholas constantly flaunted his wealth at lavish costume parties while ignoring the struggles of the lower class. There were a lot of common traits within my references, so I tried to incorporate them into my designs. I first noticed a lot of frogging on the jackets, which are those strips of cloth rimmed by buttons. Because Vlad already has a triangular motif, I decided to try making the frogging more angular too. I also gave him more fang-like buttons that pull closer in the further down they are, to emphasize his massive Dorito chest. In my research, the costuming seemed partially designed to make the men wearing them look bigger. The other reason is, obviously, to protect against the cold. We're talking prohibitively large gloves, bulky boots, layered clothing, and, at times, giant sleeves. So I ended up giving him really big gloves with a triangular trim, and absolutely massive sleeves to make him look absolutely jacked. I mean, he already is, but exaggeration makes for better designs. If you want another example of this, watch the behind the scenes for Michael Jackson's Thriller. The costume designer for Michael's outfit actually did a similar thing. They added more of a triangular shape to make Michael Jackson look buffer, because he was not very buff. Speaking of which, have you ever looked at how much Vlad's body type changes when he becomes Plasmius in the show? His chest triples in size. Given Plasmius changes based off of his self-image, I'm making this a character moment. Vlad thinks he's better and stronger than everyone else, so Plasmius is even buffer than Vlad already is. This self-aggrandizement is also the reason he looks like a king. He is, in his mind, solely capable of holding the world's power in his clawed hands. Despite this, though, he wears no crown. The Ghost Zone has an actual king, and I don't think that Pariah Dark would take kindly to Vlad wearing a crown of any kind. Even ghosts are too superstitious to mess with a sleeping giant. Looking back, Vlad's canon design also has a Slavic lean to it. You've got the flipped-up collar, the giant gloves, the big cape, etc. But he's even got the belted tunic that a lot of people wore during this time. Steven Silver then adapted those historical elements into a more comic book villain vibe. But his canon design further innovates when it comes to the hair. Vlad's human design has both the slicked-back Bela Lugosi Dracula hair and the Victorian-style long, elegant ponytail. Plasmius, however, has honestly completely unique hair, as far as I know anyway. I think it's a mix of Gary Oldman's heart-shaped Dracula hair and devil horns. Plasmius' hair is honestly iconic by now, so we'll keep it and we'll just add a scruffy little mullet like Danny. By the end, my Plasmius kind of looked like he was at war. The frogging looked more like armor plates than cloth, not that I'm complaining, and his scale mail tunic skirt is slitted to promote more agility and protection in battle. And then I gave him this glorious red leather cape. It's meant to evoke images of dragon skin. And I was gonna go on this whole diatribe about how dragons in Russian folklore symbolize strength and power, and how that connects to the meaning of Vlad's first and last name. Spoiler alert, his names are also symbols of power and fortune, even if you lengthen Vlad to Vladislav. But this section is already long enough. If you want more deep dives into Slavic folklore, especially where it pertains to the undead and the afterlife, watch my Eyeless Jack rewrite. By the way, I hope you like all these random tangents, aka rangents. This video would be half as long if I could just quit info dumping. But I've got the tism worm. But anyway, here is the final designs for Vlad and Plasmius. I'm gonna be honest, I did not understand the Vlad obsession before I made this video. Now, I think I see it. He is equal parts YNCEO and wet cat. He's outwardly a charismatic man with a deep, deep inner insecurity. And he's fun to put in a maid outfit.
Yeah, Skulker!
Canon Skulker's most obvious obsession is collecting rare ghosts. He'll take them dead or alive, or in Danny's case, both at once. But when making this video, I started wondering if that collection instinct also applied to himself. Or perhaps, if there was a different obsession in its entirety. You see, the giant metal man stalking the infinite realms is not the real Skulker. The real Skulker, in fact, hides in the body's metal cranium. Skulker is a tiny little blob ghost with a real big inferiority complex. He crafted his metal exoskeleton to be powerful, intimidating, resilient. All the things he's not. He collects ghost pelts and organs as a sign of dominance. He's constantly trying to improve his metal body to handle new challenges. But that's the thing about inferiority complexes. It's never enough. No matter how big, strong, and tough you are, no matter how many trinkets and trophies you have, you will never be enough. That's the point of an inferiority complex. Not that Skulker realizes that right now, or Danny for that matter. He's got similar insecurities. But more on Skulker being Danny's dark reflection in a second. I saw a Tumblr post where someone was hypothetically talking about making robotic bugs with organic insides, and how the mixing of metal and living tissue might be really effective psychological horror. And then I got an idea. An awful idea. What if I did that, but with Skulker? As I was designing my version of Skulker, I decided to kind of model him after a glass frog. He's still got the metal body, but now it's overtly skeletal. But the real star of the show is the bulletproof glass all around his body and what it holds inside of it. What does it hold, you might ask? Viscera! Lots and lots of viscera. I waffled a lot on how I wanted to portray this, but he's got these little receptacles for all his trophies, which are muscle tissues collected from his many ghostly conquests. In addition, he's got some very human-looking guts hanging out under his ribs. They're pure ectoplasm generated by Skulker. For now. Put a pin in that. But going back to more of my design choices, I turned his mohawk into a flaming mohawk because a lot of the ghosts just have flaming hair. Notably, the Halfas don't. They have regular hair, but as soon as they die, they get flame hair. Anyway, with the metal, I ended up giving him a lot of those welding sutures that the original design has. I gave him finger guns and a whole bunch of other places to put his little weapons. And in the final version, I also gave him pants with tons of pockets, army boots, and a belt to hold, you guessed it, even more trinkets. It was also kind of a struggle trying to figure out how the ribs would look, but the design I landed on, I feel like it looks really cool. I think angular is best for the ribs. He's also got a grinning skull for a head, obviously he's a skeleton man, and he's got a creepy ectoplasmic glow sprouting from all his orifices. Anyway, I think Skulker's design fought me the most. It was hard trying to juggle so many details, and I was so indecisive about all of it. I started out with a simple exoskeleton idea with guts hanging out in the chest. His design then started to remind me of animatronic endoskeletons, so I incorporated more wires and tubing and pistons into his design. In my last Danny Phantom redesign, I had a whole section based on the ultimate enemy, aka Dark Dan, aka Void. And I bring that up because I want to play with some more opposites. Each of Danny's villains should be a dark reflection of Danny in some way. While Void is a human that became a monster, Skulker is a monster that's trying to become human. And there's actually two ways that this idea presents. And you're not gonna like the second one. Let's start with the less unhinged version. In the Ultimate Enemy timeline, I like to think that this has a more moral lean to it. As Void is growing as a villain, Skulker starts to go on a redemption arc, about why he's insecure about his true form, and whether this endless hunt for bodily improvement ever really got him anywhere. So perhaps his last act involves him doing something genuinely heroic. You know, before he gets spaghettified by a walking black hole. And it's kind of fitting that I ended up giving Skulker such a dark metal color here. I was gonna lighten it up to his canon colors, and then I ended up preferring the darker metal. Throughout the design process, I was like, you know, this kind of looks like my Void design. And now, with the color change, it's an intentional choice. But enough about the Ultimate Enemy. In the main timeline, I've got a much more horrifying idea. My Skulker is kind of a walking trophy case, an animatronic metal machine. He's far from human in any sense of the word, and yet he designs his form to look human. Why? Remember how I said Skulker is a monster trying to become human? Well, what if that was slightly more literal? What if Skulker's not just after Danny's pelt? What if he's got a better trophy in mind? Sometimes, when Phantom faces off against Skulker, he dissolves the ectoplasm in his chest. It's a reminder. The Metal Hunter has a spot for his organs, waiting to be filled, ready to be on display. Skulker will never be human, but he can try, in his own demented way. See, I told you weren't gonna like it. Or maybe you do. Honestly though, that idea is not the freakiest thing I've seen in the Danny Phantom fandom. We are a vivisection fandom. We got more vivisection up in here than the island of Dr. Moreau. And here's both versions of Skulker's design. I'm still proud of it despite the struggles I went through. I made a version with or without pants, both so you can see the full trophy case, as it were, and also because without pants, his design is just so busy. There is nowhere to rest the eye. Anyway, hope you like this unhinged little freak. Last up, we have Nocturne. And I'm gonna be honest, unlike the other canon designs I talked about, Nocturne's design is not effective, in my opinion. Right off the bat, I gotta talk about Frightmare, the episode that this guy comes from. It is so boring and stupid. There, I said it. Too many brain-dead one-liners, zero character nuance. Danny even lampshades the fact that Nocturne's evil world domination plan is stupid and overwrought. And what's the deal with the dream helmets? Nocturne needs tech to siphon people's dream energy? Couldn't he just have been written to naturally have that ability? It's not like superpowers are a rare thing here. It's not all bad, though. There were a ton of really interesting things I want to explore here. I love how Nocturne apparently doesn't need the portal to come to the living realm, from what I can tell. He just pokes a diamond-shaped hole into our dimension and slides on through in a cloud of swirls. When I was doing my early silhouette explorations, I incorporated those shapes into Nocturne's design. Canon Nocturne is your classic world domination, I want to be all-powerful type villain, which I thought was a total waste of potential. Nocturne is just begging to be a nuanced character. So here goes. My Nocturne doesn't really care about power. They care about people, or at least the idea of them. Nocturne is so old they've long since forgotten what it's like to be human, assuming they were ever human in the first place. So they infiltrate people's dreams to study them. Nocturne wants so badly to understand them, but there's something they can't yet comprehend. Why do humans persist, despite enduring so much hardship? Wouldn't it be so much better for them if they didn't have to suffer? What Nocturne wants, more than anything, is to protect these little humans they've come to love. They put people to sleep, keep them wrapped in sweet dreams, because they think it'll make the little humans happy. But it won't. Not in a fulfilling way. People don't grow when they're sequestered in Fantasyland. It is often because of our struggles, not despite them, that we evolve as people, but only if we choose to learn from them. As you may have guessed, my Nocturne is a dark reflection of Danny. Phantom wants to protect everyone from all harm, and so does Nocturne. But what Nocturne doesn't realize, and Danny must learn, is that too much of a good thing is still harmful. Drinking water is very good for us, but if you drink too much water, you'll flush out all the electrolytes in your body. You'll poison yourself in the very pursuit of doing a good thing. Danny can't protect the town from everything, and neither should Nocturne. So, in this episode, canon and my version, Danny doesn't protect the town. Not in the traditional way. A benevolent Sandman has placed everyone in eternal sleep. In response, the town hero must become the boogeyman. Because when your body's in danger while sleeping, what wakes you up? A nightmare. From this point, we're gonna get a little philosophical. I hope you like that, because I'm not trapped in this room with you. You're trapped in here with me. Nightmares have two very real ways of helping us. When we sleep, our brain filters through short-term memories to see if they deserve to become long-term memories. That process then becomes a little TV show for us to watch at night. Things that we're thinking about a lot also become plotlines for the show. But when we avoid those pressing thoughts, they come out in our nightmares. Or flashbacks if you're me. It's the body's way of forcing us to acknowledge reality. Our body cannot process these memories until we face them head-on. In order to truly conquer fear and overcome our past, we must look it in the eye. Once you do that, the brain can then fully process the memories and put it in storage. But there's another use for nightmares: protection. Anything from cold temperatures to breathing problems to loud noises, or even just the need to pee can trigger a nightmare. And all of those things could have serious consequences if they're not addressed immediately. Your brain does not want you to freeze to death, or let your bladder explode, or get ambushed by a predator, or stop breathing. Brain no likey, so brain give you a nightmare to wake you up. I'm helping, brain say. I am good brain. And then you proceed to have the most horrific nightmare ever because you're a dummy that let the temperature drop to 50 degrees one night. Thanks, brain. Now I can't change the thermostat because I'm terrified our totally real roommate will bust in and dismember us. All that is to say, dreams are the gateway to the subconscious. They're an essential factor of our health, both physically and psychologically. So I think the lesson Danny learns from Nocturne is about self-actualization. In this episode, Danny has to master his own subconscious. He must let go of the fantasies he clings to, look his demons in the eye, and make peace with them. Only then can he convince Nocturne to release their hold on Amity Park. Okay, let's finally talk about Nocturne's design. In very early iterations, I was still going for a scary, nightmarish look. But as soon as I figured out their backstory, I did a heel turn. Nocturne's no longer a boogeyman, but a sandman. I made their shape a little more swirly, turned their really cool, inky tentacles into a flowing mantle of starlit nebulas, and leaned more into the owl imagery. Nocturne now has these big, innocent baby eyes that glitter like a stained glass window. I wanted to make them look more whimsical, so I made their forearms more loopy and bendy. I gave them longer horns, which I think makes them look less threatening. Nocturne still has their eye scar, but overall they just look like a friendly, curious creature. My Nocturne is also a fluid creature, from the dreams they weave, to their concept of gender, to their shape. I tried to reflect that in my final design. Nocturne's canon design has several references to animals. I noticed ram horns, an owlish face and feathery sleeves, and octopus tentacles. I thought that was a really cool idea to blend animals into his design, but I didn't have the slightest clue why this choice was made. Let's try to make some sense out of it. Rams and goats usually symbolize masculinity, strength, and resilience. Owls tend to symbolize wisdom, intuition, change, and hidden knowledge. Interestingly enough, octopuses also tend to symbolize hidden knowledge, intelligence, and adaptability. But what happens when we combine this symbolism? I came up with this idea. True strength comes from fully understanding yourself. Considering everything we just talked about with the subconscious and dreams and nightmares and stuff, I think that's really fitting for my Nocturne. From the start, I had the idea to give Nocturne an actual owl head instead of just looking like an owl. This made me pursue the idea of making them an animal-headed Egyptian god. Spoiler alert, it did not work. But since these videos are all about the design process, and not just the end result, here's the most important things that I considered. I researched a lot of different Egyptian gods to see if anything fit. Bes, Tutu, Nephthys, Nut, Khnum, Amun, you get the gist. All deities that were either tied to dreams, the night, or rams. I had the idea that Nocturne could be an aspect of one of these deities, but the more I considered that idea, the less it felt right for the character. It also would have messed with my color symbolism. In ancient Egypt, white and red were considered death colors. Nothing grows in red sand. White is often considered a funerary color, certainly in the East as a whole, but Egypt as well. Black and green were symbols of life because the Nile's black soil brought life to the desert. As we've discussed, that is opposite to the symbolism that I'm building here. Overall, I'm just glad I was able to land on a design I was happy with. Here's Nocturne! I actually really like this design. I really branched away from liner in this video, and honestly, I don't mind it. And here's all the villains I designed. I might do more villain redesigns if y'all want it, but I also want to redesign and rant about Danny's family and friends. There's a lot to defend there, and also a lot to critique and tweak. Anyway, hope you have a great day. Bye! One of those texts has to...